Reaction
by
Homethings.
Nice. Gold dust.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Reaction by Homethings. Today I'm sat with Nguyen, yes, nailed it, who is the human behind Sustainable and Social, which is a platform for the sustainably curious. Amy, it's a pleasure.
Good
to
morning.
sit with you.
Good morning and happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Oh my gosh, loving that it's Friday. And also nearly International Women's Day, even though this is going to come out after, but fun.
Yes, we love women.
We adore women. So before we get going, because I want to know all about your platform and about you and about what you do, tell me your bonkers bits of the week.
Okay, so I did my homework and I had a little think on this. I have one corona related and one un-corona related.
Very topical.
So my corona related is, firstly, why am I being told to wash my hands? That is bonkers. I've known that for so long. I don't need to be told by the health secretary.
Oh my god, so true.
To wash my hands.
So true. And it's like, if people are waking up to washing their hands, gross, what have you been doing for your entire life anyway? How are you not sick already?
I don't know, it's quite scary.
Bizarre.
And then related to that on the sustainability front is I recently seen graphs and kind of like satellite images of China and how where all the factories are in China, all the pollution is slowly lifting because obviously production has come to a close because no one's buying anything from China, and you can just kind of see this like clean air all over again. So I thought that's quite bonkers.
That is bonkers. I love that. Do you know, it's a tough one, stuff like that, isn't it? Because it's like, is it a good thing? Is it not a good thing? You know, on the one hand, coronavirus, not good. On the other hand, lower pollution, fantastic. So, tricky. Let's not go down that route. So mine is not at all knowledgeable, but I thought was a bit interesting. Might be a bit dark. It's that
Go for it.
if you keep a goldfish in a dark room, it goes pale. Did you know that?
No. Who's your source of information for that?
Just
one?
the older apps called facts.com. And that one came up. That was the first one I saw, and I was like, that is quite bonkers. But then I don't know if that's cruel. You know, should you be keeping the goldfish in the dark room? Is that mean?
I don't know if fish need vitamin D or not. Biology's not really my forte.
Me neither. Let's not go down that route, shall we? Let's move on.
Let's stick to what we're good at.
Let's go back to sustainability, not marine life. So, Amy, why don't you start by telling me just a little bit about you as like a person? Like, tell me about yourself.
Great. So I am currently living in Hampshire. I've lived in London as well. I've also lived in Milan and Asia as well, in the Philippines.
Amazing.
I've recently decided to leave my job. I worked in the luxury beauty industry for a while. Prior to that, I've done a BA in history and an MSc in international business and management as well. And I've worked in like marketing and comms and things like that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey.
That's really exciting. So, how come you've lived all over the world? That's really exciting.
I mean, partly for my dad's job, and then also I lived in Milan when I was completing my master's, which is part of the reason why I became so inspired with sustainability.
That's amazing. And off topic, but if you had to pick one of the places that you've already lived before to kind of settle forever, if you had one ticket, not allowed to come back, where would you pick to live the rest of your life?
I mean, if I had to pick, then I'd pick the Philippines, obviously. If it was a place I hadn't visited, it would be Vietnam, because my dad is from there, and I mean, it's just a home away from home. I think I've left my head and my heart in the rice paddies of Vietnam, so take me there.
Take me there, never take me back. I love that. So let's talk about, I'm going to guess, I'm making a leaping judgment here, that you left your job to do Sustainable and Social. Yes or no?
Partly yes. I'm really kind of dedicated to creating a life that revolves around sustainability. I think we all work so hard, especially in London, and I think you need to wake up and have purpose to your everyday life and find that within that. And if it's not, then
absolutely. No, I agree. Go and don't. So tell me about Sustainable and Social then, because I found it, that's why I contacted you, because I thought it was really interesting and really inspiring. But for people who may not have come across it, how would you sum it up? What was the inspiration behind doing it, and where are you now with it?
Great, sure. So Sustainable and Social started as an idea that I kind of had when I came back from my master's. So I did international business and management and focused particularly on green management and sustainability, corporate social responsibility, fashion and luxury management, and also the very, very complex topic of global supply chains. And within that, lots of conversations were cropping up. We looked at climate economics. We had this incredible guy called Frank Reyes from the European Commission come in and give this talk on climate science and climate change. And I just sat there and really I knew the basics, but I didn't understand the severity and like the gravity of what is actually happening to our planet. So this kind of sparked like little nodes in my brain. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? And at the same time, in fashion, we were looking at global value chains and outsourcing and how these mass market retailers, you look at Inditex, you know, own Zara, Pull&Bear, Massimo Dutti, how they're basically chasing the cheapest cost of labour for someone else to profit. So, you know, you see a girl in Cambodia who earns less than 30p an hour, if that. And then you see Amancio Ortega, who is one of the richest men in the world, who owns Inditex. And you're like, excuse me, not sure that's quite right. So the amalgamation of these two things, I started writing a lot. I've always been really interested in writing. I was fashion and beauty editor at the Mancunian, which was Manchester's newspaper, and things like that. I was like, well, I kind of just want to break down these complex issues that we're going through and really convey that to like my friends. At first they were like, whoa, this is interesting, and then lots of people, and then my family are like, okay, and then slowly it started trickling down, and that's kind of where it all started, and it's just stemmed from there, and the network has really grown. So it is mostly on the platform of the website, but social channels too.
Definitely. So how long ago, what exact date was it born? Was there like an exact date that you remember when you were like, I'm going to launch this and it's going to become live in the world, and especially on the web?
So it went live in December 2018, so it's only been like a year and a little bit.
It's a baby.
So it is it's still in its infancy, which is what makes it so exciting. And I think when you start these things, and I'm sure you see with your favourite websites and your favourite blogs as well, they develop so much over time, and you know, the direction of content might change, and like for 6 months it might just be about sustainable travel, or you know.
Exactly. And that's actually something that I was going to ask is, have you, over those kind of 18 months, 2 years, have you seen it noticeably kind of change the direction of travel? Has it either been a conscious decision from you to say, oh, I started it with kind of this in mind and actually I want to take it more in this direction, or have you just seen the natural progression as obviously, you know, we become more educated and things become more topical and, you know, there's a bit of an awareness piece? How has that journey evolved from your perspective?
So I think it really started with laying out the foundation. So you can see I have like the S&S Decoded series. So that's breaking down all the kind of complex but fundamentals. So if we look at the sustainable development goals, or if we look at climate science, or if we look at things on a more financial spectrum, such as socially responsible investing, like where's the money from our pensions going? Why is that funding fossil fuels? And then it kind of trickles down into, you know, how our everyday behaviours, although they may seem like incremental, they may seem really like insignificant, can amass to something really, really powerful in the pursuit of change. So that's why, you know, it could be something lighthearted, like, okay, well, the sustainability or sequence, and people might roll their eyes and think, that's not important. But no, it is. It's an everyday thing that we can change.
100%, especially if you love sequins.
Yeah, it was a bad breakup. It was a bad breakup. So things like that, and I think looking at food and looking really at other parts of the world, especially in developing countries, and how they're tackling sustainability issues. I think that's something that I'm really keen to addressing, having recently been to Cambodia and Vietnam for January, and seeing the work that they do, I think is a really great juxtaposition of all the things that are going on in our current climate. And then also on top of that, I think the policy side for me is really important, so kind of getting that across to my readers. So I also write for Fashion Roundtable, which basically champions diversity and sustainable fashion within the industry, but also linking that with Parliament, because really it's important policy level as well. So that's kind of fine.
Amazing. So you cover so much. So I think what is really important is about the decoding piece, and especially so for today, talking about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because I think that's something you've done a lot of research into, and something that you have a post about it on Sustainable and Social, and I thought it'd be a really interesting idea to just kind of have a bit of a crash course. Let's go through it. Let's talk about kind of what they are, why they're important, and I guess maybe kind of just for those people who aren't aware of them, because I, pre kind of joining Homethings, was definitely not aware of them at all, why it's a big awareness piece and why actually maybe more people should be aware of them. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, so I think the first place that we really need to start is defining what sustainability actually is. We hear a lot of like ethical, green, eco, thrifty,
Conscious.
Yeah, but what does sustainability actually really mean? And if you break this down, as defined by the United Nations, it's about making and creating a safer operating space for like the present generation and the future generations as well. So it's looking after the planet and all of our society so that we can thrive for, you know, centuries and centuries to come. So I think that's really important to like, absolutely get to grips with first. And then when we look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so they're the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and they were agreed by over 169 parties, and they essentially comprise of 17 goals and 169 targets. So it's rather a lot, but I mean,
it's quite in depth, yeah.
But this is basically, this spans from everything. So this spans from ending poverty to sustainable economic growth, diversity, ensuring great marine wildlife, you know, ensuring that we don't lose biodiversity and all of those things. And they all kind of amalgamate together and form what we really think should be what sustainability is all about. So there's a lot of ground to cover, but I think, yes, that is in essence it. And they're used by governments, institutions, businesses as a framework as well. So you may see lots of companies now that have corporate social responsibility reports or dedicated sustainability reports. And lots of the time they'll use numbers 1 to 17 through to the framework. So for instance, how are their operations ending poverty, or how are they trying to achieve inclusivity within their workforce, and then outside of that as well, how are they combating the crisis of climate and things like that.
Got you. So I think it's something that is obviously really important, especially in today's kind of situation that we're in. Why do you think it is that they matter so much, and why do you think it is something that needs to be, I guess, maybe adopted more? Because they're not, businesses don't have to legally kind of commit to one, do they?
No, they don't have to commit to any kind of framework, and I think that's where we come in as well. I think in part it's us as, I hate to say the word consumers because we shouldn't be defined by the things that we buy, but maybe the words like citizens. As citizens, that's what we really need to voice our opinions on, is why aren't our favourite businesses using this as their framework and rejigging their business model accordingly. It's crucial. But also, in addition to us as citizens, I think we really need to look at policymakers. We need to look at the government.
Absolutely.
Like, there's only so many times you can write your MP and be like, listen, I wanna know, what are you doing about this? Like, the government have to do something. And I think the government really need to put this into like absolute rigid force that companies should be abiding by the Sustainable Development Goals. They should be able to walk into, a parliamentary committee, and if someone questions them, like, okay, what are you doing to, preserve marine wildlife? And okay, I am doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah, exactly. And be held accountable for it.
Exactly, accountable and responsible. And really interestingly as well, I think another thing on that policy note where the government really needs to take responsibility is the fact that the Environmental Audit Committee, they put out a fixing fashion report. This is just one example. They put out a fixing fashion report last year detailing all the problems with the fast fashion industry in the UK alone. We're talking like things like factory workers in Leicester get paid £3 an hour. We talk about the environmental degradation of all these places in Indonesia due to the fact that our UK retailers just don't care. They set out 18 recommendations for the government. This included like taxing on fast fashion, etc. And the government rejected every single one.
That's crazy. That is actually crazy.
So, the government really need to
They need to listen to the podcast and step up. That's what I'm saying.
Hey Boris, if you're listening.
Hey Bojo, we're going to tweet you. Have a little read. I just, stuff like that I just think is almost unacceptable, and also they can get away with things like that, and it's always passed back down to the consumers, the citizens. It's always kind of addressed as something that we should be doing, and of course you're right, we absolutely should be doing stuff, can be doing stuff. It's about, you know, lobbying, it's about governments, it's about actual policymakers and big corporations and conglomerates who actually really have
the power to affect,
on a mass. That's the thing, because you and I could say, oh, we're going to go vegan and we're not going to buy anything new and we're going to no buy any more single-use plastic, but it actually needs to come from a much higher and bigger level, to give us, I guess, an option in what how we live our lives, what we consume and what we do, but also, you know, they're the ones who can drive huge force and at a much faster level than us on the ground can realistically do so.
And really, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because the thing is, within the Sustainable Development Goals framework, the reason why it's 2030 is, as agreed in the Paris Agreement in 2015, but all these countries got together. They basically agreed, we'll curb global warming at 2 degrees. That'll stop, you know, rising sea levels, rising temperatures, displacement of people that have to leave their countries due to climate change. 2 degrees isn't enough. We need 1.5 degrees.
Yeah.
And to hit 1.5 degrees by 2030, we need absolute, rigid, like militant, authoritarian measures. And that includes things like cap and trade, like taxing carbon effectively. At the moment, the government has said in their budget this year, it's probably fossil fuels aren't going to be taxed anymore. So,
fossil fuel. Do you know what I feel
so
like?
How is that going? So I just don't understand how you can commit to that. It's like, so Boris is going to commit to cutting diesel cars, but also you're not going to tax fossil fuels anymore. How does that work?
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. So I went to a By Beauty sustainable summit for International Women's Day last night, and it was absolutely amazing. But something that one of the speakers mentioned, which I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that conversation has conveniently gone silent, is about fossil fuels. You know, it's something that we learn about in geography in year 7 about fossil fuels and how bad they were and how they're running out, etc., etc.
Something about drawing a little cartoon of the ozone layer, and you're like, yeah, got it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mr. Bennett, absolutely got that. But that has kind of gone very, very quiet. All the focus is on carbon at the moment, and although yes, of course, carbon is something that we need to neutralise and focus on, what about the fossil fuels? Why is no one talking about that? Because that is a very real issue and something that people are just quite happy to gloss over now.
I know, I think, and that also comes into play. I recently found out the bank that I've been banking with funds fossil fuels, so...
Oh no, is it Barclays?
It's Barclays.
I knew it. Do you know what? I didn't even see the card. There it is, the evidence. Leave Barclays immediately.
And you know, it's just crazy.
I
So
know.
we need to really think about
People just
that.
need to sort their shit out, to be honest. So, I would actually be interested, and I think I know you can do it because there's some help there. But what I would be interested in knowing is a top line level on what each sustainable development goal is.
Mm-hmm.
Just I know you can go online, you can Google it, but it's really interesting to just hear what they are, and you don't have to go into a lot of detail, or you can if you fancy it. You know, if one really gets you going, feel free. But just could you give us a top line of what each one is?
Absolutely, that is no problem at all.
Yes.
So, starting with goal number 1.
Settle in, ladies, settle in.
And I think this one, I mean, if I had to pick one that was most important, it's which came first, the chicken or the egg, but this is crucial. So, ending poverty in all its forms everywhere in the world. And for me, I think that really hits home. There's this crazy statistic that by 2030, over 167 million children will be living in poverty.
That's horrendous.
So, you know, we can talk about the environment, and I think often the social humanitarian aspects get forgotten, but
Absolutely.
We'll go on. Goal 2, ending hunger, also really crucial when we think about our day-to-day lives. Over a third of the food in the world globally is gone to waste. So how can you minimise your waste?
Yeah.
Goal number 3, ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being for all ages. So the World Health Organization are working hard right now to catch coronavirus. So we'll see how that goes. Goal number 4, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education. And goal number 5, achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. So very topical on the fact that we've got International Women's Day on March the 8th. And so on average, less than 1 in 3 senior and middle management positions are held by women. That's crazy.
That's horrible.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And they said that in 2014, 143 countries guaranteed equality between men and women, but yet 52 failed to take this step. So where are we going in this direction? That's what I'd really like to know, and the kind of infrastructure that's in place. Goal number 6, ensuring availability and sustainable management of clean water and sanitation for all. Water is going to be a scarce resource by 2030, and I think that's startling. So currently, 3 in 10 people lack access to safely managed drinking water services. That's nuts.
It is nuts, yeah.
And 1.8 million people use a source of drinking water which is contaminated. And that's where I think the fashion industry really ties in as well. And the World Health Organization put out that the chemicals used in the fashion industry in Bangladesh that are seeping into the river is the world's largest poisoning of man.
Oh my god.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And then so if you think about how much water takes to create your pair of jeans, it's over 3 years worth of drinking water. We're essentially wearing the scarce water of people in the developing countries.
Absolutely, and yet put no value on that. It's a very throwaway item.
And then it goes into landfill.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the pair of jeans that you throw into landfill, about how much water that is for someone, I don't know. That's where I resonate with that one quite a lot.
Sure.
Okay, we'll speed through. Goal number 7, ensure access to affordable, reliable and sustainable modern energy for all. So the crux of that, we need to innovate and develop new renewable energy technologies and really decimate that, and going back to our fossil fuel conversation. Goal number 8 is promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth for all.
Mm-hmm.
So that includes employment. So we need to create long-term opportunities. We don't just need to have factory workers that go in and go out. We need to train them so that they have employment opportunities after they leave as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Goal number 9, build a resilient infrastructure. So promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation, which I think is great. Like if we were talking about startups earlier, that's a great way to do that. Goal 10, reduce inequality with and amongst countries. So we look at the distribution of wealth. We think of we think of our country, and then we think of somewhere like Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
The standard of living is just
absolutely, yeah,
pales in comparison.
100%, yeah.
And goal 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. So I think this is really important when we touch on climate refugees. As we have an increased frequency in climate disasters, we can see it now with the Australian bushfires, with the floods. I'm not talking about the floods in England, I'm talking about everywhere in the world. These places are going to become uninhabitable, and the amount of climate refugees is going to be insane.
I know, it's crazy. And there was a stat that I learned yesterday as well at this summit that said something like 80% of those who will be most affected by kind of climate crisis displacement are going to be women as well, which I just think is a horrendous statistic. As a woman, and seeing, we're trying to promote women and have that conversation, and yet 80% of people actually displaced and most affected will be women. But people don't seem to be having those conversations about what happens, the after effects of these natural disasters. It's like, oh well, that's okay, and we have the disasters in England, and we're quite well equipped to deal with them. But all around the world, people are not, and people are in severe humanitarian crisis that just get completely overlooked and not acknowledged at all.
And the actual definition of a refugee now is not inclusive of climate change, but I think that really needs to kind of be redressed and looked at, because these people don't have a choice. It's not like there's a totalitarian leader there. They physically cannot go back to that land because that land has disappeared. I recently learned, I can't believe I didn't know this, but the capital of Indonesia is moving. Jakarta is sinking, so they're moving it to it's going to be kind of near Borneo in the beautiful jungle, so they're chopping all the jungle down. But if you think a country now in 2020 is moving their capital, what's going to happen in the next few decades?
I know, it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I didn't know that either.
So yeah, it's nuts. so it kind of gives a better picture. And on that is just making on that goal as well, I think it's about making cities sustainable. So it's about architecture, design, planning, just how we can really create a way of life, whether it's vertical buildings, all this like beautiful greenery, to really kind of elevate our way of life.
Absolutely.
So it is more sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay, goal number 12 is ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. So if the global population reaches 9.6 billion by 2050, as it's predicted, we will require almost 3 planets to sustain our current lifestyles. Don't think we're going to find
I don't even think we're going to find one, let alone another 3. That's mad. That's absolutely mad.
I know, and so I think that's where it comes in. All of our like little incremental behaviour changes can really drive. You know, I'm not saying go vegan all the time, but just maybe have a little less meat, or you know, maybe just drink that milk. Just drink that milk. It's the soy production as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one. I think you're right about the incremental changes. I think people, it's such a weird narrative, isn't it? I feel like we're stuck between almost this real shocking state of eco-anxiety and almost feeling too overwhelmed to feel like you can make any change at all, and so often then don't do anything because you think, well, you know, what good is me shopping secondhand instead of going to Topshop and buying something new? What good is that going to do? What good is getting a coconut flat white prep than like a normal flat white prep? But I think
in your refillable cup.
Obviously. Absolutely delicious. That's my drink of choice. But I think you're right. I think if we can start to push, you know, people into looking at more sustainable ways of consumption, and also for companies to look at more sustainable ways of production as well, because it's, you know, it's a bit of a yin and yang. One can't operate sustainably without the other. Then hopefully we can start to speed up and start to look at some actual positive steps rather than feeling like we're not achieving anything.
Yeah, they call it existential. Eco-anxiety, but they call it existential despair as well. And just kind of on that topic is Harvard Business Review have various green marketing articles which provide businesses with tips on, you know, how they need to effectively market in this new sustainable world that we're living in. And it's about being void of guilt, but providing hope to your consumer as well. So right. I think that's really important.
100%, yeah. I mean, no one wants to be scrolling through everything and feeling total despair every single day. People need to offer a good solution.
No, okay. Oh gosh, we're gassing away here, aren't we? Goal 13 is take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. So, this is crazy. It would take the world approximately $1 trillion annually to commit and invest in combating climate change. If we don't do that, this is by an economist called Nicholas Stern. He's a very intelligent man. If we don't commit that 1 trillion annually, it's like first time, you know, it's going to cost us 5 trillion annually a year, which could actually then increase to 20 trillion annually a year for every year that we don't invest in combating climate change. That's why this problem is absolutely pivotal. So yeah, we really need the finance guys out there to do that. And that's where governments go in again. Goal 14 is conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas and marine resources for sustainable development. I think you don't even have to be attuned to sustainability to know about the problem of our oceans now. We've seen the Attenborough effect.
Oh, yes, Blue Planet. Mm-hmm.
You know that by 2050 there'll be more plastic by weight in the sea than fish, and we're already consuming microplastics in our fish now.
I know, it's horrible.
So that's crazy. That is, and also on that note is 3 billion people rely on like marine wildlife and oceans for their survival, for their livelihoods. That's another reason. So environmental is one aspect, but then the social impact as well. Goal 15, protect, restore and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, and combat the desertification and reverse land degradation as well. So we see Brazilian Bolsonaro chopping down his Amazon rainforest like there is no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That is not. It's
shocking. It's absolutely shocking. At the rate that they're doing it as well, and knowing the detrimental impacts that has on the climate crisis and the planet is bizarre. And even just like general biodiversity and like things that we need to survive, it's crazy the rate that that's happening with what seems like little to no care.
I know, and they say here, forests cover nearly 31% of our planet's land area. Yeah, we're chopping it down. We need them. We need them to breathe. Like the value, like the economic value as well that ecosystems provide to businesses. You know, for all of our materials is crazy as well. If we don't look after them, businesses will also be in trouble. So I think that's a crux of understanding that as well. Okay, goal 16, the penultimate one.
On the home stretch.
Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, providing justice to all, and providing effective, accountable and inclusive institutions at every level. So when we look at institutions, we're not talking about just NGOs, we're talking about governments as well.
Yeah.
How are they promoting peace? We see wars, because as resources become more scarce as well, we're going to see a whole lot of fighting. Not just for oil.
That's the thing, it'll be
like
else.
the fighting going on for the toilet roll in the supermarkets at the moment because of coronavirus.
That is the most bizarre scenes of imagery I have ever seen in my life. It's people stacking up, panic buying, and I've got a lot of friends in Australia who would then send pictures on Instagram of like genuinely, and we've all seen them on the internet, just the completely desolate, empty toilet roll aisles, which just I think is on another level. I just think that is
It's
not
apocalyptic.
It is apocalyptic, and also just like it's very ableist to like panic in these situations and to be able to go to the supermarket, like run into the supermarket in your car and whatever, and buy God knows how much money's worth of toilet roll. I mean, toilet roll isn't like the most expensive good, but it's still money, you know, and people are stockpiling it and like forgetting about people who are disabled who might not be able to get to the supermarket like that easily to run out and panic buy, and then if they're going to get there there'll be nothing left for them, or people who, you know, can't afford to stock up and stockpile and they only can do their shopping, you know, once every 2 weeks, and when they go there's not going to be that resource there available for them. So I have a very negative view about people who are super panicking and like just like not being responsible to other people and just not being like conscious of humans. I think there's one conversation, and this is a whole different podcast, but being conscious about the planet, that so often we actually just forget like about the human level of being conscious for each other and actually kind of helping
it's a level
each
of
other.
compassion and community that
Exactly.
isn't.
All the good C words, yeah.
that we need. Okay, and then finally, we're there. Goal 17 is strengthen the means of implementation and revitalise the global partnership for sustainable development. So, Donald Trump, why did you pull out of the Paris Treaty?
That is directly to you, GT.
But things like that, you know, countries need to collaborate, businesses need to collaborate. It's not like it's not a zero-sum game. Like everyone can win, which I think is really important to kind of think about. And I think that's where we need to reiterate that to the government as well. Businesses aren't going to lose out. You know, green job, like the millions of jobs that are going to be created by the green industry. That's insane.
100%. Completely agree. So, I mean, thank you for going through all of those. That was fantastic, especially for, I didn't know half of those. I know of SDG 12 because Homethings is committed to SDG 12, which is all about responsible consumption and production, which is obviously great. What is your, I guess, opinion on, you know, responsible consumption, let's say, as citizens and consumers, and how do you think we're making that transition to become more conscious? Do you think it's something that's easy? Do you think it's something that we're being helped to do? Do you think it's becoming intrinsic? Or like, what's your view on that?
My view is I think the public are becoming increasingly educated and increasingly attuned to what is going on. I think with the kind of environmental events that have happened and all the news media, you know, there's 97% consensus that climate change is happening. That's really important. And now people are beginning to get to grips with the severity of it. Maybe 2 years ago it was a bit like, yeah. And okay, people are like, no, now I purposefully want to pay an extra £1 for my organic produce and know that actually it was a fair trade worker that picked it. I think that's really important to the consumer to navigate now. I think there is still a large intention action gap. I think people say they're being environmentally friendly or would consider themselves environmentally friendly, yet they're not really putting their money where their mouth is. And, you know, whether it's because of convenience or, you know, I mean, you can't blame someone if they don't have the money to spend that extra on something that has a better social and environmental status. So I think the intention action gap is still very much there. I think it will close over time as investment in green businesses makes prices cheaper as well, and it just becomes an absolute norm. But I do think it will become an absolute norm. And, you know, we look at shopping. When the government introduced the 5p plastic bag, there was uproar. It was, what do you mean? Absolutely not. And now it's just a part of everyone. You don't even have to be a planet lover. People just go to the store with their plastic bags.
I know.
So if you think about that and how we can, you know, kind of put that into practice in all the other areas, whether it's fashion, just stop buying, go to the charity shop, go to a vintage store, buy something that's upcycled, borrow from an app, you know, that's fashion. Beauty, refillables, think about it.
Absolutely, completely agree. When I was at this talk last night, the Anna Charlotte, who's head of, I think she's head of development or global expansion at Olio, and she was saying that every time you buy something, you are making a vote. So you're voting for what you want to see, you're voting for what you believe in. So for example, if you know, and I know this is not a you know, very interesting example, for example, if you decide to go into New Look, let's say I just walk past it, and you go in and you buy that top, you are making a vote to continue to support what they're doing, their business model, their kind of view on sustainability and the planet. Like, you can make an active choice through everything that you purchase, and it doesn't have to be huge expensive things. It could be if you've decided to buy recycled toilet paper rather than toilet paper, you know, you have the power to like vote through your shopping, which I just thought was a really interesting way to put it.
Yeah, they say like purchase with purpose. And I think that's an exciting thing as well about technology and how we can do that. So there's great things like artificial intelligence, and there's blockchain companies as well, and check out Provenance, it's incredible. And what they do is they make supply chains transparent. So super techy, but essentially you can trace where your item has come from at every stage of its supply chain and value chain. So now that we have this access to information, it's becoming more readily available as consumers. I think that's really inspiring and really hopeful for what we can kind of achieve on that front as well. And it will just be the norm and be like, what do you mean you don't? What do you mean you don't disclose your information? I'm not buying from you anymore.
100%. I think like transparency within the supply chain is so important. So to kind of tie things up nicely, obviously all these changes need to be made at a global level to have real impact. You know, it's like everyone needs to do everything at the same time to have like a real big kind of boom, but not in a negative boom kind of effect. What in your view are things that maybe people should be more aware of, or that we should actively be doing? And that's not necessarily from our purchasing decisions. Could it be more about educating ourselves, or kind of actively asking questions of businesses? You know, what sustainable development goal have you committed to, even if you know that they haven't, to try and challenge them and raise the conversations? Like, what do you think that people can do to help?
Okay, I think the first thing that people can do to help is educate themselves. So I think going back to how we purchase with purpose is learning about greenwashing and being able to skill yourself on cutting through, I'm going to swear, cutting through the bullshit, basically.
Yes!
Sorry, Mum. No, but isn't like cut through the bullshit. Like, why are you lying to me? A great example is if you look at Primark in January, had like their like Love Your Planet denim campaign.
God, yes.
So consumers need to understand that because your jeans are made from recycled whatever does not mean they're sustainable, does not mean that someone has been paid a living wage for them. So cutting through the crap and distinguishing, and then at the same time learning about B corporations and what amazing fair trade organisations there are that are really using and the sustainable development goals at the core of their principles. So I recently met with founder of this amazing Australian denim brand called Outland, and they have like right at the bottom of their website Sustainable Development Goal 1 and Sustainable Development Goal 8 right at the core of their mission. So I think that's really encouraging, and learning, like schooling yourself on that so you know when to recognise it with companies.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important. So the education piece, and I think being an active citizen, I just cannot reiterate that enough. Like writing to your MP, writing to these brands that you absolutely adore, but you feel like they're falling short in some respect. I think Extinction Rebellion, okay, for some people they may be a little bit extreme in their approach, but really they're hammering home what needs to be done. Protests, we look at Greta, school strikes, God, I wish they were around in my day.
Same.
But that's the kind of attention that it needs to be given, I think the government need to act on these things, and at the moment they're not. And we can have conferences in Davos where everyone flies in and they talk about the severity of climate change, and you have all these powerful men sat there, and it's all conversation,
Exactly.
It's just all talk,
Always
no
all
action.
talk. Yeah, it's because it makes them look good to say that they've had the conversation, but then no one ever follows through. You don't then see someone come away inspired and be like, yes, actually we're now going to implement this into our next policy, or the government's going to be taking a stance on this. It's like, oh yeah, okay, bye. See you again next year and have the same conversation. Or I don't know how many times that was once, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, so I think really voicing our concerns and voicing what we would like to see as well, not putting on the negative, but think like all these amazing things that you see in other countries do, like sustainable countries like Finland, Amsterdam. Like, how can we bring that into practice here in the UK as well? I think, yeah.
Absolutely, totally agree. We're going to end on a would you rather quiz.
Okay.
Which I have not prepared you for. Are you ready?
Go.
Okay. Would you rather live in a teacup or under a mushroom?
Oh. In a teacup?
In a teacup, yeah.
In a teacup or under? Okay.
I'm imagining here you are tiny.
Okay, I'm absolutely going to say live underneath a mushroom. There are multiple reasons for this, but I love mushrooms. Shelter, because I hate the rain and I hate the cold. And also, if you're underneath the mushroom, it means you're outside in green spaces, and that just makes me a very happy lady.
And also, you're probably a fairy if you live under a mushroom, let's be honest. Would you rather never be able to use a touch screen or never be able to use a mouse and a keyboard?
Oh, I would rather... I'll keep the mouse and the keyboard, and I'll forgo the touch screen.
Interesting.
I'm just not that bothered by like my phone and stuff. Like, I'd like to leave it, but I'm obsessed with like my keyboard, and like I really want an old typewriter.
Oh my gosh, divine. Yes, even the sound, so satisfying.
Yeah.
And like a little click click. Love it. Would you rather put ketchup on every meal or put salsa on every meal?
Well, my friends will know that I normally have ketchup and sriracha with most of my meals anyway, so I'm gonna go ketchup.
Ketchup is absolutely disgusting. Sriracha, absolutely divine. So there for that. Ketchup, no, my god, no. Would you rather always be 20 minutes early or always be 20 minutes late?
Oh, 20 minutes early. Time is the most precious resource that we have.
Same. I feel like I've, in the last year, I would always be a late person and would hate myself. No excuse, literally no excuse, just didn't manage my time. And this year, actually no, last year, I'm now early to stuff, and I am very happy with that change. I feel like it's a nice human thing to be early, because it shows you respect the other person's time, you know, rather than being like, oh, sorry. Sometimes you can't help being late, but, you know, you should always try and be early. Finally, this one is quite topical, given the viruses everywhere. Would you rather lick the bin or lick the floor?
Oh. Is that what area of the world is the bin in? Is it in London?
Let's say it's in this room. Let's say, I guess that's a bin. Say there was a bin here, an actual bin that people put food in and stuff. Bin or floor?
That's disgusting. Do you know what? I think I'd go floor. I'd take my chances with the floor.
Would you take the floor?
No, because the thing,
oh my god, I'd do the bin.
People might put some really gross things in the bin though.
People have gross things on the bottom of their shoes. No, you said it now. You're the floor licker. Amy Floor Licker. Okay, change your Instagram handle. Where can people find you before you change your Instagram handle? Where can they find you on your current Instagram handle and your website?
So
Plug yourself.
So you can follow me at Sustainable in Social, and then I have Sustainable in Sock is my Twitter handle, and then www.sustainableinSocial.com.
Love it. Sounds like an advert on American TV. Love it. Thank you so much for coming in on this
having me. I've
Friday
loved it.
morning. It's been amazing. We have been get_Homethings, and just in case you know, we're launching on March 31st, which is very, very exciting. Can I get a whoop, 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 whoop? So much energy and passion. Thank you, Amy. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much.